Feeling empty inside is not a sign of failure. It's not a sign of brokenness. It's a clue. It's your body's way of telling you that something's awry, something's missing. In this video, we're going to explore 3 reasons that people feel empty inside. I wonder if you ever feel alone, if you feel like there's just nobody there for you. Sometimes even when you're surrounded by people, you feel like something's missing, but you don't know what it is. If these things describe you, stick around. In this video, we're going to explore the missing ingredients, those things that cause us to feel like we're empty inside. When I was a pastor of a traditional church, there was this expectation that was placed on me that I would be happy all the time and that I would never have any doubts and I'd never have any questions and I wouldn't be a skeptic, and it's all pretty unrealistic. It felt like I was alone. I was surrounded by people in a way that I've never really been in any other role. Every Sunday, there's the handshake after handshake, the row of people who want to say hello and check in, and there's people throughout the week that I'm seeing, and despite feeling surrounded by people, I still felt completely alone because parts of who I was had to be hidden. It was great when everything that I believed aligned well with the party line. Then I could be authentic and real, and I could show up, and I was in this space where I was living life with these people, so much so that they became the only people in my life. But when I started to doubt, when I started to have questions, I knew that I couldn't let people see that side of me. It could cost them their faith. And I would have felt responsible for that. Eventually, wearing this mask, taking away and emptying myself of everything that was authentic, emptiness is exactly what filled the vacuum that was left behind when my authentic self was all gone. I've been blessed since then, and I've worked in several ministries where I didn't have to hide my authentic self. But it's this memory that sticks with me. It reminds me of what it feels like to be alone when you're surrounded by people. I know that this isn't an isolated feeling for pastors. I know that many pastors feel it, but I also know that people who are not pastors share the same feeling. So let's explore just a little the 3 reasons that people might feel empty inside. The first reason that people might feel empty inside is a lack of connection to other people. There was this experiment where they took rats and they were in a cage and they fed them water. And there was 2 types of water. There was regular water and there was water that was laced with some sort of a drug. They would continue to drink that water over and over and over again until they died. And this became one of those studies that was used to think about what does it mean to be addicted. A little bit later, somebody came around and they said, well, wait a minute, this isn't exactly the way rats live. Rats are social creatures. Let's see what happens if instead of locking them alone, isolated in a cage, what happens if instead we put them in a giant container that has other rats that they can play with, and it has lots of toys and other things for them to have fun with. And in this scenario, the rats would try the water. And they would go back to it enough to get addicted to it. But then they would just stop. Addiction is a sign of a lack of connection. When we feel disconnected, when we don't have, as the rats did, other people to connect with, other people to belong to, then we go to the substance as a way to self-medicate, and we'll go back to it over and over again until it harms us. So lack of connection with others is one of those things that can make us feel empty. Jim Wilder did this research around connection with other people, and he actually found that our character development is built in and connected to this idea of belonging to a group of people. He said that our brain is constantly asking the question, the subconscious part of our brain is asking the question, what do people like me do in situations like this? And whoever you define your people to be, you'll act in alignment with them based on how your brain answers that question. But if you don't have anybody to belong to, if you don't have any way to answer that question because you don't have connections, you don't have a people like me, what do people like me do in situations like this? Your brain has to spend so much extra time figuring out what to do in a situation like this that's so novel because you don't have a people like me to decide what to do. The second reason that we might find ourselves feeling empty inside is a lack of something bigger to belong to or to do. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist who, he was a Jewish psychologist who was a prisoner of war during World War II. And he was in the concentration camps, and he used this knowledge as a psychologist to observe what was going on. And he wrote a book about this experience. And as he looked around at what people were going through in this scenario, he had a lot of really incredible observations about how people survive in situations that seem unsurvivable. This quote I want to read to you. I consider it a dangerous misconception to assume that what man needs in the first place is equilibrium. What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. What he needs is not the discharge of tension at any cost, but the call of a potential meaning waiting to be fulfilled. Viktor Frankl noticed in this dire situation, those who made it found some bigger cause to work for. And he found that essentially they had to choose the cause. They had to pick it. It had to be freely chosen. If it was given to them and they didn't accept it, it didn't work. People who don't have something bigger to belong to than themselves, they feel empty inside. The third reason that people might experience a feeling of emptiness inside is a lack of a why. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." It's interesting in particular, given the world that Nietzsche grew up in. The war had ended and people with untreated trauma were all over the place. These people had been given a mission to do, and then suddenly they didn't have a why anymore. The work life of people at this time drastically changed. It moved from a life of farming and interconnectedness and relationship with the people in your community to the industrial age when people were put in a factory and doing the same task over and over again. And in that space, their why had faded. And it was also a time when religion was in decline. And so the meaning of faith had started to fade away. And so the third reason is why. If we lack a why, we might feel empty. The last two probably sound a little similar, being a part of something bigger and having a why. And I understand how they might sound similar, but what I'll point out is that if you have a why, but you're not taking action, it's empty. If you have action, but you don't have a why, that too is empty. So you need both. The self-help industry constantly teaches us to focus on ourselves. But I think it's wrong. And I'm not the only one. Jim Wilder, who we talked about, Viktor Frankl, Nietzsche, Jesus, the mystics, they all teach this turn outward. They all teach this turn outward instead of this inner turn that we often hear in the self-help industry. I think it's interesting, actually, that even the self-help industry is moving towards recognizing that an inner turn and staying there is not effective. I was listening to a video the other day by Tony Robbins. Even Tony Robbins was recognizing and saying, if you're completely focused inward, you die inside. You become empty. So the 3 reasons that somebody might feel empty inside: a lack of connection to other people. They might not feel like they're a part of something bigger, and they may not have their own why. So what can you do about this? How do you solve this? Knowing which one it is for you is an important first step. Like in the story I told earlier, I recognized that in this setting of a traditional church, I was disconnected. I was surrounded by people, but I was disconnected. I wasn't able to engage authentically with these people, and so it created an empty feeling inside. Knowing that creates automatic action steps. But that being said, I want to give you an action step here that you can take that might help. I want to invite you to join the Spiritual Wandering online community. It's a place where you can connect with other people who are on the spiritual journey, the misfits, the meaning makers, the mystics, people who are on the margins of faith. This is a place that is built for them, where they can belong and connect with other people. It is a place where you can engage in purpose, because you can help this community become what it will become, because it's in its earliest stages. It just started this year in 2025. And so it's brand new, and it's ready for people who are ready to put their fingerprints on a new community, who want to be at the start. You can be a part of something bigger. And a why. This is a place for people who are on the margins of faith, who are often excluded from faith community in many ways. And so a why could be ensuring that other people in the future have a place to belong. Just go to community.spiritualwandering.com. I look forward to seeing you.